Nirvana then is the Buddha where you return to your own nature.
那第四个自性清净涅槃，这个就是到佛的这个佛位。
Oh, and the picture? Who's the picture of? Marcus, who is that?
Maitreya.
Yeah, and who is Maitreya?
Laughing.
Yeah, he's laughing Buddha. What else about him?
Future Buddha.
Mama's helping. Okay.
那下一句，行深般若波罗蜜多时，时悉时悉勿错过，慎之慎之取天真，渺渺冥冥通消息，恍恍惚惚见本尊。这是上人的偈颂。
Okay, so this is very much meditation that Shurf is talking about here. So it says, time and time again, don't miss the chance. Take care, seize your divine innocence. From a mysterious mirage, we get some good news. In a vague and unexpected vision, we perceive our honored origins. So he's talking about the process of meditation where we begin, our normal thinking begins to become wisdom, and we begin to get insight or flashes of what things are really like, and that's this description.
那时悉时悉勿错过，是我们修到这个光阴是非常宝贵的，不要空空的就把它放过了。所以说时悉时悉，这个时候你不要把它放过去了。什么时候呢？就是行深般若蜜多时，这个时候你不要把它空过去。
Okay, so the whole point of this first line is to tell you, don't waste time. And that can mean two things. It can mean in your meditation, stay alert. I mean, after you have your little nap, come back and actually try to figure out what your body's all about. Because we don't really know. And when we sit in the position I talked about, if you can, you begin to be aware, because of the pressures inside your body, you begin to aware of all this energy. And you need to figure out what to do about it. And so you begin to concentrate on your gongfu, on developing some skill. You have all this energy, what are you going to do with it? And that's what he's talking about here. Don't waste the time just false thinking when you sit. Don't waste the time of saying, well, it's uncomfortable to be in that position, so I'm going to get in an easy position. And when you get in that easy position, you can't use your effort because you're not applying pressure to yourself. Okay, go ahead.
慎之慎之取天真，你要很谨慎的，不要在这个时候忽略了，不要把这个光阴都空过了。这样子修行才能够得到这个深般若，也就是天真，一种天真的道理。
Okay, so the next line says, again, take care, seize your innocence. Because in meditation, less is better, simple is better. And so a lot of the sophistication that we come to learn, things like competition, how to excel, how to progress in life, those things fall away when you meditate, and that's the reference to innocence. Inherently, we're very simple, and basically the meditation will take us back to that simplicity. And you think, well, does that mean that I won't be able to be competitive in my job? It doesn't mean that. In fact, it means that probably as you begin to understand your mind better, you're going to be even better at doing the things you have to do in the world.
渺渺冥冥通消息，这种事情是渺渺冥冥的，你想看一看却视之不见，你想听一听也听不见。恍恍惚惚见本尊，就在这个时候，你渺渺冥冥有一种好消息了，有一点好消息了。恍恍惚惚的，你看着是说是真，又好像没有形象；你说是没有形象，又好像看见什么东西了。 见本尊，这个本尊就是自己的自信。
Okay, so the next line of his verse says, from a mysterious mirage, we get some good news. As you know, a mirage is when it's very hot, then the air moves very fast, and so it seems to move things that are originally stable, and things are blurry and unclear, and often in a mirage you see what you wish were there, and when you get there it isn't there at all. So that's the kind of experience. This is somebody who's really, I mean, the master meditated for many years and was very skilled. And so when he is willing to write a verse like this and let us know how he progressed through and how it happens, it's a wonderful guide for us when we meditate. We don't need to be afraid if in our meditation we are not quite sure what we're seeing or what's going on. We don't have to be afraid we'll lose our precision and our ability to think clearly. And then the next one is connected, because he says in that back and forth and in and out that you begin to have in meditation, where you're seeing the mundane world and then you're seeing something else which isn't the mundane world, what he says we're seeing is our own nature. We're going back to our Buddha nature. We're going back to our inherent nature. Now the nature surpasses the mind. The mind that we use ordinarily obscures that nature. So as we meditate, as we quiet down, as our mind is not so busy, there's potential for us to actually see the nature. That's what Sixth Patriarch talked about, seeing the nature.
那就是行深般若波罗蜜多时，是刚刚上一句。下一句
So that's the same thing. Oh, okay.
对啊
Yeah.
下一句就是照见五蕴皆空。上人这个句诵是三光普照透三彩，一归何处复一来，见色即空受那事，妄想牵流行业排。
All right, so this line, these first lines are going to talk about how Guan Yin illuminated and perceived the five skandhas all as empty. The five skandhas are what we're made up of. They are form, feeling, thought, and then our subtle mind movements, and then our consciousness, which stores our karma. Those are the five. And in these verses here, the Master first mentions four of them. So he says, three lights pervasively shine, permeating the three forces. We'll explain that in a minute. The one returns to unity, and the one comes forth again. Perceive that form, that's the first skandha, is empty, and feeling is too, that's the second skandha. False thoughts, that's the third skandha, are shifting currents, and mental formations arrange our karma. Formations is the fourth skandha. 你解释，你也白话一下这个，因为你说你要讲这个，所以你白话我翻译你。
三光普照这个。
Yeah.
哦 ，OK。
Yeah.
那刚刚这个第一句就三光普照透三彩，这个三光普照透三彩，上人在这个内言咒里面他也讲到，就是说他一开始在解释内言咒的时候，他用了这个偈颂。他说你能够了解内言咒，你能够持诵内言咒，就是一种什么样状况？就是三光普照透三彩。
Okay, I'm translating. Okay, so the first line says the pervasive illumination of three lights permeate three forces. This is a different verse the Master wrote, not for the Heart Sutra, but for the Shurangama Mantra at the beginning, because he wanted to explain the function of it. So the first thing he talks about is three lights illuminating and permeating three forces.
那这个三光的话，我们一般看到这个字面，我们就以为是讲这个日、太阳、月亮、星星的这三光。其实在这个地方上人讲的意思是在内言咒里面讲，这个三光是身上的光，跟我们口里的光，跟我们心这个心的光。
Normally we think of three lights, we think of sun, moon, and stars. But in the mantra and in the explanation, the master's actually talking about the light of our body, the light of our mouth, and the light of our mind.
那这个根据上人的讲法是这样，就是如果你一直持续在修行这个内言咒，这个一直持咒，一直有这个功夫了之后，如果是像有些人他有开眼了，他看到你的时候，你身上是放三种光，就是身上放金光，然后你的嘴巴，因为你一直持咒内言咒，你嘴里是放红光，你这个心是放白光，所以这个三光指的是这三种。
So what he's discussing here is another kind of meditation where you're going to focus on the mantra and you keep using the mantra in your practice just as we might use meditation. And in doing so, because you're always reciting the mantra, it's always with you, your body light, if someone has their eyes, their spiritual eyes open and look at you, your body light will be gold. And the light of your mouth, because you've been reciting the mantra, will be red. And the light of your mind will be white.
那这三种光透三才，这个三才
So here are the three colors, right?
那三才指的就是天地人，就意思是说，当你持诵的内言咒当有你的功夫的时候，你全身就是放光，然后这个光是可以直通这个天地的。
Okay, so this light, if you continue practicing, then it expands. In other words, the aura around you expands with the golden light, the red light, and the white light. And that light can reach up to the heavens, and it can be here on earth, and it can be with people, other people.
那第二句说阎浮世界你不来，就是这种光你在这个阎浮世界这个娑婆世界你找不到的，你必须要有修行你才有这种光。
The second line describes this person who has this kind of light. And it says in Jambudvipa is the large place we live. It's a continent, and in Buddhism, in the cosmology. And Saha world is within Jambudvipa, and that's the world we live in. So here he says, you're not going to find any ordinary person in our world who has this kind of light. It has to be somebody who practices.
然后大德大善能遇得，无德无善不明白，这个就是上人每次在讲内言咒就这么讲，他说这个你要遇到内言咒是非常不容易，不是说你今天好像很普通的情况你就可以碰到内言咒，你一定要有这个大德大善，你必须要有很大的这个善根，你才有办法遇到。如果你没有这个累积这个大善根，你今天就是人家告诉你内言咒，你也听不进去，人家送你内言咒，你也不想要，因为你没有兴趣。这个就是因为无德无善，所以你不明白这个内言咒的妙处，不明白这个妙法的用处。
So the master here actually writes in his verse what he often encourages us with, which is to say that you couldn't even meet the mantra, let alone practice to the point that you are emitting the lights, if you didn't have virtue and you didn't have goodness. In other words, most people who can come upon the mantra and hear it and accept it are people who in their past had that affinity before. And so they have what we call good roots. And so when they meet it, wow, they're really excited about it. They really want to learn it. They want to do it. On the other hand, if you don't have that, then what will happen is the last line, which says, without having enough virtue and enough goodness, then we won't understand it. And Jin Fusher's point is, you may come upon it, but you can't even hear it. You don't understand what's being said. Or you may be given a copy of it and you just put it aside because you don't have the affinity, because you don't have the virtue and the goodness for it. So this we can show people on the line. So the three forces are heaven, earth, and people, and above that, the light she talked about. Normally we say sun, moon, and stars. Here we're talking about it being the colors in our body as we practice. Yes, but there's one more explanation that the master gives for the three lights, and he calls them the three lights of wisdom. Wisdom that comes through language or communication. That is when we teach and you learn about things the Buddha said. The second one is wisdom that comes through contemplation, which is through meditation. And the third one is wisdom that comes with truth, when you actually have the wisdom to recognize what is true.
那在讲这个心经的时候，这个三光藏人的意思说，这个三光是日月星的三光，普照就是这个普遍照耀，后三才就是天地人。那这边的三光讲的是文字的般若光，观照的这个般若光，还有实相的般若光。那实相的般若光也就是深般若的光，以这三种的光可以把天地人都照遍了。
It's important to learn some accurate and helpful teaching before you practice or as you practice. Otherwise, it's easy to get lost in your own false thinking and in your own things that happen to you and not stay anchored with principle. So that's why we wanted to give you a few of the Master's explanations of what things are like when you meditate.
第二句说，一归何处复一来，一就是指人的这个自性，归何处，何处也就是性的处，万法归一，亦归何，神光不明感达摩，雄耳山前跪九载，只求一点朵阎罗。
Okay, so this verse talks about the second patriarch in China, Shenguang, and he received the Dharma from Bodhidharma. And this is his verse, and the first line is what he came to understand in his meditation. You'll see that the character for He, which is the last one in the first line of the verse, is on the top. It's a picture of a person. And then we have the character for one, and under it is a mouth, but it's interpreted as the character for zero. So you have a person, and then you have one, and then you have zero. And this is the symbolic character that talks about how the one, if you took it and you connected the two ends, it becomes a zero. And how the zero is nothing. But if you break it and you add a 1, it becomes 10, and then it becomes 100. And this is how the Master talks about true emptiness, the zero, and wonderful existence. When you put the 1 on, and you could go ad infinitum in the number of numbers. So it's symbolic, and so is the discussion of true emptiness and wonderful existence. It's beyond my understanding, but I think you need to know it's there. And so it wasn't beyond his understanding. He came to understand what that meant when he meditated with Bodhidharma. And so it says that he meditated for 9 years, which he did, waiting for Bodhidharma to say, you got it. And finally, after 9 years, Bodhidharma said, you got it. And the reason he's avoiding King Yama, who is king of the dead, is because it was time for him to die. And King Yama sent his messenger, and Shenguang, the monk, said, can I have a little time to try to end birth and death? And so he was given that time, and he went to Bodhidharma and after 9 years, he ended birth and death. So he didn't have to go die because King Yama had summoned him. Oh, so you want to say all this? Yeah, okay.
那万法都要依归，依是什么时候呢？就是我们人的心，也可以说是我们那个自信。依归何处？合就是相合了。和什么相合呢？和佛性相合了。你和佛性相合了，然后又复一来，又生出这个一切的妙用。这种妙用就是你所成的那个佛，这个叫做复一来，也就是你这个佛。
Go ahead. I'm going to let them read the English.
我们这个身体就是由地水火风合而成的，我们身上的皮肉筋骨也就是这个地大，那土沫啊、大小便溺啊、水分啊、汗啊都是水大，身上的温度就是火大，我们身体又有呼吸又运转，这就是风大，在这个四大合就成立一个身体。四大如果分张的时候，这个身体就灭了，就没有了火，就归于火大，水归于水大，风归于风大，地归于地大，各有所还，又回到它的本位去了。那么这就是空了。
So this talks about how in the Buddhist perspective and in the traditional medicine perspective, the body has made up of elements. And when those elements scatter at the end of our life, our breath stops. And when our breath stops, that's the end of this life. And when that happens, then for the sake of this symbolic discussion, that's emptiness. We no longer have that body. But we know in Buddhism that our soul goes on and that we go into rebirth again. Is that it? Or?
Oh,
let's see.
下一个。你如果明白色即是空，就不要再执着这个身体，把这个身体当作我了，或是我的归我所有，就是归你所有，你也不要不要执着说这个身体是我所有的，我要好好的帮忙他，那你又变成做他的奴隶了。你这个心就是那种觉知性，你明白这个身体是个色法，是个假象，就不要执着它。你不执着它，就把这个色蕴破了，色蕴空了，受那识受蕴也是这样子的，和色蕴一样。
Because this talks about in meditation, when we apply effort, we can go into samadhi. In other words, our mind can become very still, and in our position that we take in our body, everything is balanced and quiets down. And at that point, it's possible even to leave your body. And yet, it's this very thing that keeps most of us from that, because we think that we are our body. Or we at least think that the body belongs to us and I better take care of it. So it's almost instinctive in us that when we reach the point of meditation where we could leave the body, we don't. We're protective of it because we have this instinct to take care of ourselves and not let anything happen to us. So that's partly what's being talked about here, is that we have to understand that we are not our body, and that even though, yes, we carry this body around with us and it serves us, it's not the only body we'll ever have.
妄想牵流行业排，妄想就是想运，牵流就是行运，行业排行运也就是和它排列在一起。
Okay, so this is talking about, then we have the feeling, then we have thinking. So that's what this line of verse is about.
下一句，照见五蕴皆空，这个上人的偈颂是：是乃了别五因句， 镜花水月觉尘埃，空而不空名大用，见犹未见乐快哉。
Okay, so we come to the last skanda, which is the consciousness skanda. And that is the creation of us. When we leave one body and our karma gets sorted out, we go to another rebirth. It may have a body and it may not. We may not, in our next rebirth, have a physical body. We may be a spirit. We may be some entity that doesn't have a tangible body. Or we may receive another body. In general, if we receive another body, we get another set of 5 skandhas and we go on again. So the verse says, consciousness records the distinctions and the 5 skandhas are complete. So we have form, feeling, thinking. Formations is the subtle part of our mind that controls our metabolism, controls the growth of our fingernails, our hair, falling out of our hair. It controls our process through life from birth to death. It controls our aging. That's called the formation skanda. And then the last one here is consciousness. And consciousness is the controlling skanda. As flowers in a mirror or moon in water, they cannot be touched by dust. In other words, they're all ephemeral. All the skandhas are empty. They're not real. That means we're empty and not real. That's fine to say, but it's not easy to realize. And part of meditation can bring you to the point of understanding. I'm empty. My skandhas are empty. Everything is empty. The last one is perception unprecedented, meaning never having had this happen before. When it happens, if you can bear it, if you can bear to know that you're empty, that things are empty, and it doesn't make you crazy, if you have enough samadhi, then what you experience is something you can't really tell anybody else about. They'll have to do it themselves to know. So Shifa calls it a quiet delight. And this only talks about the consciousness, right?
是乃了别五音句，是这个是乃了别，这个是韵就是了别的作用，了别就是分别。五音句就这样，五音就具足了，五音就是色受想行识。
他说，Okay, so the last one. The function of the 8th consciousness is to sow the seeds of whatever we create with our karma. Our karma is our deeds. And once we have done a deed, then there is a storage of the record or the image or the shadow of that deed in our 8th consciousness. That's one of its functions. Then when we pass away, all the karma that's left goes with us, because it's our 8th consciousness that transmigrates. It's the other name for it is our soul. So if there are things you did in this life and you didn't already receive a reward or retribution for what you did, then that seed is going to go with you. And in the next incarnation or sometime after that, you will receive the reward or the retribution for what you did. Those are the major functions of the consciousness skanda. Now, I want to show you how we come to be with these 5 skandhas. How come it's not letting me do it?
Tap it again.
What?
Tap it again.
I've been tapping it. Not going to let it come up, huh? Too many animations, 16 of them. Okay. Okay, so you can just watch and... Oh, so I have to scrub it?
Yep.
Each time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see. when we come into the world, say this time, we came to the womb. Maggie just arrived. She can tell us about it. We come into the womb, and what comes into the womb at the time of intercourse, when the egg and the sperm come together, what Maggie brings is her soul. And she becomes Maggie, right? Okay, so that's what we see here is the consciousness comes in. And we get Maggie. There's Maggie. Okay. So when the soul and the egg and the sperm unite, if all the conditions are right for life, then that begins form. And we have this little blob, and this little blob over the weeks in the mother's womb begins to take shape. And eventually it becomes the shape of a simple fetus, and so forth. And the other way. Oh, this way. Sorry.
Try using this and flip it with the pen.
You mean slide it?
Yeah.
Now which way do I go? Okay. So as the little fetus develops, it begins to get little eyes, little ears, little nose, little tongue, little body. And so it can now begin to experience, as those develop, it can begin to experience those feelings. And that becomes our feeling skandha while still in the womb. Okay, and then we go on. And actually, while still in the womb, our brain, which is probably the generator of our mind, begins to form, and we begin to have thoughts. And for a child in the womb, those thoughts are such things as, if mother drinks too cold a drink, it plunges the kid in the womb into being frigidly cold. Mother drinks too hot a drink, then the kid is too hot. In other words, the child begins to feel those sensations. And in order for them to be identified as too hot or too cold, or at least a pain-pleasure reaction, the mind has to be involved. And then the final thing in the womb would be what we call the mental formation skandha, which is the beginning of being able to control the systems in the body. The mind functions that way. So it takes care of those systems. And then the child is born. That's one explanation of how the skandhas come. They come starting with consciousness.
镜花水月觉尘埃，镜花就是色受想行识这个五音，也叫五蕴，就好像镜花水月似的。镜里头照出来的花，水月就好像水里头的月，觉尘埃，没有一点的尘埃的染污，这也就是五蕴皆空的意思。
So Shiva uses the analogy of the moon in water. The moon in the water is only reflection. There's no substance to it. Or what's the other one? Oh, an image in a mirror. An image in a mirror isn't really there. It's there, but it's not in the mirror. So what's in the mirror is not real. And that's the way the skandhas are. So he uses these two analogies to try to show us that the skandhas are empty.
空而不空名大用，在你还没明白五蕴是空的时候，会有很多的烦恼妄想，很多的麻烦。你若明白了，就在这里面能够转世成智。名大用，你就在能够这个真空里边生出妙有，生出妙有，这就有一种非常大的妙用。
Okay, so this talks about being pretty far along in meditation and being able to this it down. A person may, when they've reached that in their meditation, they may then, when they're not meditating, be in that state. And one of the things that can happen is they cry all the time. They don't know why they cry. They just cry. Or they laugh all the time. Anything comes up, they laugh. Those are emotions. Those are part of feeling. And it's caused by the breakdown of the skandhas in meditation, this diagram we're seeing here. So the Buddha gave us, it's almost like a handbook. If you know that, if you read that, better yet, if you memorize that, then when you're in deep meditation and these things come up, and they don't only come up when you're in meditation, you come out of meditation and you may carry a state like that for months. You just can't get out of it. You just want to laugh all the time and you have no idea why. Then you know, I must be patient because right now I'm at that stage in my meditation, and so I have to wait it through. The sages talk about it. They put it in their diaries. They say, I was in this for 3 months, or I was in this for 3 days. And sometimes they'll just go sleep it off, try to get out of that state. So that's what the Buddha did in the Shurangama, was to tell us all about that. That's the last part. Do we have time? We can stop here. We're almost done. Do you want more questions? Are there questions that are worth answering? I mean, are there questions that were asked?
然后下一个偈颂是三心三指透三观。
There isn't any commentary.
三心指的就是过去心、现在心、未来心。然后三观指的是三观指的就是我们身体的这个上观叫做玉枕观，中观叫做甲己观，初观又叫尾观。这个就是这有人如果是学那种道家的或者是学中医的，可能他们会了解这个。
Well, yes, but also if you do Buddhist meditation, you gotta learn it. It's not just Daoja. Okay, so the little quote is also from the Heart Sutra. It's another of Shurfa's verses, but we didn't have time to go through all. But this one is kind of important. So it says, when 3 frames of mind come to 3 stoppings, 3 closures open. 3 frames of mind are past, present, and future. 3 stoppings are stopping having your mind dwell in past, present, and future. That's not easy, but that's what that requires. And when that happens, along with your yogic practice, which is what we started talking about today, how to sit and how the energy moves, the yogic part of it, you can open these gates. So the first gate is at the base of the spine, at the coccyx, or what we call the tailbone. And that means in meditation, the pressure you're applying, along with living an ethical life, can bring you to the point where you can open that gate. The middle gate, I suspect, is around the Mingmen, which is a little bit lower than the navel. And that is the second gate you open. And the third gate is here, at the back of your neck, at the bottom part of your spine, the occipitus, what's it called? Yeah, that's it. And they're all 3 not easy to open, but those are the 3 Guan that are so familiar, as she says in Taoism and other things. But also, I mean, this is Shurfa's verse on the Heart Sutra. So also, doesn't matter what meditation you do, those are the 3 gates that you have to get through. Okay? Okay. I'm going to do those.
那现在是在讲到，就是我们讲说，打坐就是这个打坐不只是你坐着的时候叫做打坐，你行住坐卧其实都可以在这个禅坐的这个状态里面。那其中立禅就是你要或住或立，明目明心，减情摄念，习业养神。
Another baby. Okay, so this is instruction, very simple instruction on meditation. You can meditate, you can do standing meditation. Dr. Verhoeven likes to do that. There's a certain form you take. As Jin Fusher said, you can meditate whether you're walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. So here it says when you're stopping, that means when you're standing, or when you are walking and you take a pause, relax your eyes, relax your mind. This is a lot like Tai Chi, yoga. They will tell you to do this. Restrain your emotions, gather in your thoughts, and refrain from making karma and nurture your spirit. So those are the advantages of sitting in meditation or standing in meditation.
以往是勿追思，未来是勿影响，现在是勿留念。
Okay, then, as to your mind, we talked about past, present, and future. And Sherpa said in his verse, you have past, present, and future with your mind, and you have to stop them. So here it says, how? It says, if something's already passed, don't reflect on it. Don't bring your memory up for it. And for things not yet to come, don't wish for them or anticipate them. So that's the past and the future. And for things right now, don't linger on them. They come and they go, just like images in the mirror. And the last slide.
那坐禅时，静坐，少思寡欲，明心养气，存神。
Okay, and the last, this is sitting. Sit quietly. Keep your thoughts to a minimum. Lessen your desire. Relax your mind. Nurture your breath. And collect your spirit. So those are simple instructions on how to meditate. You have a question or two? You had some, didn't you, Jin Fusher? You could just say there were a few about 42 hands and answer that one.
在网上有很多人问到说，他们很想学这个42手眼，是不是在万佛城还有可能有在办这个传授这个42手眼？
Okay, so there were several questions about the 42 hands, which were transmitted by the master. They are mudra and mantra combined, and there are 42 of them. The questions are: will the master can they be transmitted? For instance, at the city of 10,000 Buddhas, and could you ask the monks to do it more often? The answer to that is we do have a system for that since the master left, and usually the 42 hands are transmitted to people when they become novices. And they've been novices successfully for 2 years, and they enter the final stage. This is 108 days of intensive practice. And on entering that platform, the monks will come and transmit the 42 hands to the novices. That's the normal way. But the other way is from time to time, the elder monastics will decide this year at such and such a time on such and such a day, anybody who happens to be at the city of 10,000 Buddhas can get the 42 hands. And you never know what day, what month, what year.
Okay. 现在在万佛城就是有2个方式可能会传授这个42手眼，一个就是沙弥或沙弥尼他们在接受完这个108天的戒期之后，
那接受2年的训练入那个
戒坛，
Yeah.
就是他们接受2年的训练，然后进入戒坛之后，在戒坛完成之后，
No, 刚开始戒坛 didn't happen with you. That's how it happens now.
哦，
刚开始那个戒坛还没有开始那个108天，他就进来给他们，所以他们可以修在那个期间。It didn't happen to you.
when we
Really? Oh, too bad. Oh, how are you?
okay,
I wonder when you were going to tell us you were here.
就有一种状况，就是在他们要接受这个108天的戒期之前传授，但是也有一种可能是在完成108天之后传授。
是你的方式。
所以就是那个时候会传授42手眼。那另外一个方式就是在我记得是在2000年的时候，曾经传授一次42手眼。当时的比丘有宣布是说，将来是每一年都有可能会传授42手眼，但是据我所知是从那一次之后到现在并没有再传，所以这个可能要看因缘。那另外有一些人问了很多关于这个念咒，对，念咒的问题，就是像他们会问说念楞严咒啊、大悲咒啊，是不是一定要念108遍啊？这个数字是不是要很准确啊？这个都不一定的。我觉得念咒就是你要用很诚心的去念，那不要去执着这种所谓的数字啊什么。那当然，如果你给自己定功课，你每天说我一定要念完108遍，那这是你的功课，你当然是尽可能去完成它。那如果平常你不是说特别有定一个功课，你只是去念，那就是尽你可能的去念。
Okay, so the question is something about mantras, and do I have to have a fixed time I say them, and do I have a fixed number? And Jinfu Shi's answer is no, you don't. If you decide that you're going to have a schedule where you want to recite so many a day at such and such a time, that's your business. You made that decision. But in terms of general practice, if you just want to say a few mantras, you don't have to have a certain time or a certain number.
那有一个人问说，这个修持楞严咒是不是需要传承呢？然后念完全咒的时候再念心咒，然后要去观想什么种子？那其实这个都是在于你自己。那修行楞严咒是不需要传承的。如果你有因缘，你得到楞严咒，你就应该当下你就可以开始修这个法门。那有一个问到是说，如果遇到急事的时候没有办法念完全咒，像中毒的时候，是不是可以直接就念心咒？是可以的。或者是你知道哪一句咒是专门对于那个除这个毒难，也可以直接就念那一句。但是当然就是说，如果你能够想就是有时间的时候，你能够尽量的念全咒，当然是最好的。然后在
Wait, don't you go English? My goodness, so fast. Okay, so she had 2 or 3 questions there. A couple of them had to do with when you recite the Shurlama mantra, do you have to recite the whole thing? And then in the end, when you recite the heart of it, do you have to recite that a certain number of times? And do you have to contemplate certain things? And she said, really, there's nothing fixed about that either. If you come again up, you get the opportunity to meet the Shurlama mantra and you want to start reciting it, you can do so. You don't have to recite the whole thing. And there are sections in it that have meaning, like the one we mentioned to you last night. And if you want to just recite a section, you know that's also okay. Did you do any more? Was there another answer there? Troubadour. Okay.
There's one question from Australia.
Oh.
Yeah.
You看中了，我觉得那个是看中了。How can one know if any experience they get from meditation is true or not? Or do we play it safe by saying it's all false thoughts? 你先放。所以他就问，我们打坐的时候有一个境界来，我们怎么可以知道是真的是假的？或者呢，是不是每一个境界来了，我们应该把它当假的 ？Yes. That's it. Yes.
所谓佛来佛斩，魔来魔斩，就是这样。OK， 那如果没有问题，我们今天这个课就